friends. Welcome to Sky House Herbs podcast. I'm Ashley Ellenvoss, a clinical herbalist, and in this space, I share my knowledge and experience with plant medicine to help you on your own journey of healing and transformation. Join me in exploring the ancient wisdom of plant spirit medicine and how it can be used to heal the body, mind, and spirit. We'll talk to experts in the field and share stories from people who've been transformed by powerful plant allies. New episodes are released each Monday, so please subscribe. And now, let's explore this mystical world of plant medicine together. Hey everyone, welcome in. Today we'll be talking about perimenopause, what it is, some of my favorite herbs to use for perimenopause. And I'm going to break things down a little differently than maybe in most herbal videos. I'm going to talk about using the herbs by energetics because I know not every one of you is experiencing perimenopause in the same way. And if you're a clinician too, one herb doesn't work for everybody's fill in the blank, right? Everyone's asthma, everyone's allergies. So we have to think about what are the energetics, what is the person's symptoms, and then we can match a plant. So I've got about 2 plants or so per each tissue state. So I'm going to match those for you. And then maybe you'll be able to find some specific remedies that will match what you need for your body in the energetic state it's in. So that is our goal for today. If you haven't already subscribed to my channel, please click, 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 click. It really, really helps. So thank you for subscribing. Like this video if you like it. All right, I want to talk about perimenopause. So as someone in my mid-40s, I am in perimenopause. So I have firsthand experience for the symptoms and the trials and tribulations and the joys of this time in a woman's life. And I want to start by saying that menopause is not a disease. It's not a disorder. It's not something we have to treat. However, in the modern world, with so much more stress than what often our ancestors had to carry. And I don't mean that in terms of physical stress. I'll talk about that in a minute. But we, on average, as a human species at this moment in time, have much higher levels of cortisol for much longer periods of time. And that really changes our experience of menopause. So I want to talk about why this is a little different, and that we are not, again, we're not trying to cure ourselves of menopause. What we're trying to do is manage the symptoms and understand why. Why is it that we are having these symptoms in the first place? So, as I mentioned, cortisol is a huge player in symptoms associated with perimenopause. These symptoms include anxiety, night sweats, difficulty sleeping, difficulty concentrating. They can include spotting and irregular periods, very heavy bleeding and heavy periods. It can involve mood swings. Maybe I already said that. Maybe I said forgetting. No, I know I did say that. So, there's a ton of different across the board symptoms that women can experience. And some of them will experience some and not others. And it doesn't necessarily then mean that you're not going through perimenopause or you're not in it, but it might be that you're actually managing this transition well. And just because you're having some symptoms doesn't mean there's anything wrong. It just means that, hey, there's something that we might be able to tweak. So I'll just say this, like, what does a healthy perimenopause look like? And then we'll contrast that. So the smooth version of perimenopause is that we start to notice gradually over a span of maybe 5 to 7 to 10 years that our cycles start to change. Maybe our periods are not quite as heavy. Maybe our cycles get a little bit irregular. And usually the regularity starts maybe or closer to between around 5 years before menopause begins, where you have your last period. So, we can think about there might be some spotting, there might be changes in the length of your cycle and changes in the quality of your cycle. Now, if you just have you're pretty lucky. Like, that's pretty normal physiological changes. Now, another thing that's normal is your skin changing. Your skin is going to dry, it's going to sag, it's going to start aging. And that's also part of perimenopause. Now, there's certainly things we can do by eating right, exercising, using, high quality facial products, blah, 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 things we can do for our skin. But that's just something to note that like that's normal. You can't escape that. And a little bit of weight gain is also pretty normal. So, what's not normal? Well, what's not normal is if we're having real, like hot sweats, just really big. And this is, I'm talking about for like, 5 years out, right? So, you're having hot flashes, night sweats, anxiety, difficulty remembering things, you're having really intense symptoms, uh, pain, bloating, and then excess weight gain, like, substantial, like more than 15 pounds. Okay. So if that's starting to happen, to me, that's exciting because that just means our body's giving us feedback for what can be modulated. Okay. Now, here's the first thing that I want to say that I think all women can benefit from. So if I could wave my magic wand for all of you women listening and say there's one thing you can start today that will help you create an easier transition into menopause, that's going to be start taking adaptogens now. What are adaptogens, you wonder? Well, these are herbs that help regulate the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. And that's just a very long way of saying the way that our stress hormones modulate brain activity and cortisol levels and stress levels in our body. So the more our HPA axis is out of balance, let's say we just have very, very high prolonged times of stress, then we are going to actually have more symptoms when it comes to perimenopause and menopause itself. Adaptogens help regulate that HPA axis, and they give us it basically helps your body not overreact to stress and not under respond. So it gives you a little bit of a narrower window that your body can stay in. So you can go in and out of stress response because, hey, guess what's that? That's life. You can't escape stresses, but that you do so where you come back to baseline. You come back to baseline. So, what is the one herb that I think all women could take and benefit from? Well, that is American ginseng. Now, I know that this herb has been over harvested. I know that this herb has, it's been endangered. However, there in good news are a lot of growers who are ethically growing this herb in the forests of Appalachia and also in greenhouses. They figured out ways to grow this herb so that it's sustainable. And I'll link some resources below of sustainable places where you can find American ginseng. And the Latin name is Panax quinquefolius. So that's the Latin name. So this is not Chinese ginseng, and this is not Siberian ginseng. This is American ginseng. So you will need to double check the Latin name. And what I would recommend is that you take about 2 droppers full, or maybe 3 milliliters. You could do that 3 times a day, or you could take 3 dropper fulls twice a day. So that might be closer to like 4 or 5 milliliters twice a day. Why do I love this herb so much? Because it's like the quintessential yin tonic. It's like food and nourishment. And, it's called by the Cherokee and a lot of indigenous people of the Appalachian region, the 5-fingered plant, because the leaves grow and they have these like 5 fingers. It looks like a helping hand. And it's a very mucilaginous, sweet, earthy, it's such a beautiful herb, taste wise, and its beauty as this sort of outstretched hand. And when I take this herb, which I do take it regularly, it just gives me a sense of ease. And what we want through perimenopause and through menopause is we want to keep cortisol down, and that is really going to help all of the other symptoms that I mentioned. So Panax, or not Panax, Panax quinquefolium, Panax ginseng for the win is what I'm going to recommend you start with. In addition to regular exercise and a low sugar, low carb diet, not no carb, but lower carb diet. Those have been shown in studies to also help with perimenopausal symptoms. And one interesting thing I recently learned about exercise and hormones is that if you're one of those people that exercise regular, like you exercise really hard for long stretches of time and you're still gaining weight, you might actually be pushing your cortisol up. And then your body is holding on to that weight as a protective mechanism because you're in fight or flight. And cortisol often keeps us from breaking down fats and having healthy metabolism. So what you might find works better for you is to do shorter workouts, maybe do interval training, something like that, but not hard, sustained workouts where you're really pushing it for more than 45 minutes. So that's just one little tip. All right, now back to herbs. Let's talk about the tissue states and what they are and why that's going to help you maybe find other herbs you can stick in your basket. The tissue states are based on Thurston's model of reaction with the skin. And we find that when the skin, the tissues themselves, and the nerves also have different ways of reacting to stressors. So, one of the ways that we can respond to stress is through excitation. So when there's a lot of stimulation, then what happens in the tissue is it tends to become hot, irritated, inflamed, and it tends to get overly sensitive and kind of be like, don't touch me, get away, right? So that's one tissue state. Now, if you're in perimenopause and that sounds like you're just hot, you're irritable, you don't want anything touching you, your skin is sensitive to different fabrics, you just are, you feel like your nervous system is on the outside of your body, then you consider yourself to be a hot excitation, which is kind of sexy, but in this case, it's not a great thing. But that hot excitation tissue state would call for herbs that are going to be cooling, moistening, and grounding. So the two herbs I think that would be best for you would be milky oat tops. And I take these every day because I'm one of those hot and excited and irritable people. I'm very pitta. So this is milky, it says milky oat straw, but this is milky oat seed, which it is. This is milky oat seed. It comes from the same plant as milky oats. And as a tincture, really, which is the only way to get the best of the medicine, it is soothing, calming, and so good for the nervous system. It's calming. It's great for sleep. It's great for agitation. It's great for excitement of the mind. All of these things have benefits. So I would take maybe 3 droppers full, maybe twice a day. The other herb that would work really well for hot excitation is hops. And this is some hops that I made in 2016. Isn't that funny? That's a long time ago. So this is an old bottle of Humulus lupulus. And hops, it's basically the same thing you would get from an IPA or a hoppy beer. And you take those little strobiles, those flowers, and you soak them in alcohol, and then you get hops tincture. And hops is very bitter, it's very cooling, it's also a little bit drying. So if you are having if you're like sweating a lot and you're just not liking the sweating part of the heat, then it will also sort of help trap and kind of give you a little bit more boundary and tone the tissues and hold that moisture in. And I found hops in my clinical practice to be so helpful also for night sweats. So if you're experiencing night sweats, anxiety, excitation, all of those symptoms, then you might want to try hops. Now, you don't need as much of this. I would take maybe 1 dropper full, and I might take that 3 times during the day. So if you're having hot flashes throughout the day, take 1 dropper full in the morning, 1 around lunch, and then maybe 1 or 2 even before bed. You can play around with that dose. All right, what about the next one? What if you're like cold? Like, what if you're the opposite of hot and bothered? What if you're like cold and depressed? What if for you, all your functionality is starting to shut down? Your immune system, you keep getting sick, your hands and feet are cold, your periods are sluggish, maybe even the color has changed to be in a darker brown color, which is a sign of stagnation. So if coldness and I would say like depletion is happening for you, then you're going to want to start using some more warming, stimulating herbs to help with your menopausal or perimenopausal symptoms. Now, some ones that I like a lot are Angelica, and this one is Angelica Archangelica, which is the American Angelica. You can also use Dong Quai, which is the Chinese Angelica. You could use these interchangeably. They both work really nicely. I do think the Chinese Dong Quai is a little stronger than the American Angelica Archangelica. So if you tend to be a little more sensitive, maybe you go with the Angelica, Archangelica. And if you are like, I just want to get in there and like, let's heat things up, let's get things burning, then you could go with Dong Quai. And these herbs are very traditionally used for women's complaints for pelvic stagnation, pelvic coldness, also can help with libido if libido is also feeling a little bit dead. It's just a general warming circulatory tonic, especially around the pelvis. So I would try that. And this one's both of these are dosed, I would say, a little bit more on the lower side. So you could start with maybe 1 dropper full. And when I say dropper full, it's just going to be in like a 2 or 4 ounce bottle. When you squeeze and depress it, it's going to be whatever comes up. That's a dropper full, even though it's not actually full. This is how we do it in herbalism. Okay. And that's going to be probably about 1 milliliter, maybe 1.5 milliliters. So that's what I'm going to, if you're cold depressed, I would try that. Now, the other thing that you can try if you have a little bit more of that depressed tissue state and you're a little more moody and broody, and maybe you're even getting into dark depressive thoughts and like, worst case scenario thoughts, maybe you're really tied up with some female karmic cycles with the matrilineal side of your family, then Black Cohosh might be a really nice herb for you. Black Cohosh is another herb that's used for estrogen regulation and balance. And it's a really nice one for not only hormonal balance, but mood balance, because it just sort of untangles the darkness and starts you to start to see light again and see hope. And I find that it's a really good one for kind of lifting the dark cloud off of people who feel during perimenopause that everything's falling apart or falling down. The sky is falling. Then you can reach for some Black Cohosh. Another tissue state that I see a lot in my practice is constriction or tension. And these are going to be the women who are just walking around with their jaw clenched. Your neck is always tight. You're like a little bit of a control freak. You don't want to let go, because if you do, then everything you're absolutely concerned or you're sure is going to fall apart. So if you tend to be a tension type, you're really holding on tight to things, then you're going to really benefit from something that's relaxing, that's antispasmodic, that is going to help your whole nervous system as well as your muscular system relax. So my top herb for this is blue vervain, and I have that herb here. Blue vervain, it's a wonderful Verbena hastata is the one that grows here in North America, and you could also use the vervain that grows in Verbena officinalis that grows in the UK or in Europe if you live in Europe. But because I'm here in North America, I really like Verbena hastata, the local one, and it is bitter, it's cooling, it's acrid, and it really, really relaxes tension in the body, relaxes tension in the mind. It's also really good for night sweats or for any sort of hot sweats or hot flashes. I found it to be very, very helpful and very beneficial. Now, it doesn't have estrogen, but it is hormone modulating, and it does so because of its effect on the HPA axis through relaxing the central nervous system. So that's a really good one. You don't need a lot. This might be half a dropper full because it's so strong. And you could even start with maybe 5 drops on your tongue and do that 3 times a day, maybe a little more at night if you're having night sweats. So I really love blue vervain for that tension. And then also hops is a really nice one as well. So you can always try adding in hops, because hops is also very antispasmodic and very opening, really helps with heat and tension since it's cooling. So if you tend to be hot and tight, then hops might be a really nice one to add with the blue vervain. You could add those together. And then the last tissue state, there are 6, I'm just covering 4 for today because they're the most relevant, is dry atrophy. So as you're going through perimenopause, if everything's drying out, if you're having vaginal dryness, you're having skin dryness, your hair is getting dry, and you just feel like everything is losing its moisture, well, number one, your American ginseng as a moistening yin plant is going to be very helpful. And then the other herb that I would recommend for you is shatavari. This is an Ayurvedic herb. Some people call it shatavari. I don't know. I've always called it shatavari, but this herb is a Ayurvedic herb that translates as she who possesses 100 husbands. So imagine the amount of stamina you'd have to have 100 husbands. So this herb is very yin building. It's very fortifying and it's moistening and just very deeply nourishing. And I would blend this with marshmallow root and make a tea. So you could do this. I would buy the shatavari as a root, and you can buy that from Mountain Rose Herbs. This is the powder. I wouldn't buy the powder, just buy shatavari root, kind of chunks of they usually call it root cut and sift, or dried root, and blend that with cut and sift marshmallow root, and together you're going to get this luscious, moistening, luxurious, deeply feeding food medicine for your system. And shatavari is also an adaptogen, so it helps the adrenals modulate stress response. So you're getting that added benefit, as well as the work that it's doing on deepening the moistening of the tissues, all the tissues in the body. So that is what I have for you today. As I mentioned, exercise and diet, really important. And if you can lower stress levels, that is going to help you too. And there's tons of study and research that show the connection between stress and menopausal and perimenopausal symptoms being worse. And I guess I could go into the science of it. I will. If you want to stick around, I'll just talk. Okay. So what happens is when you're going through menopause, the eggs that normally help to produce estrogen in your body, you have less eggs, and as you move into menopause, because you don't have this excess estrogen being made and released into your body every month, once you stop ovulating, which can happen anytime in perimenopause, then your fat cells have to start producing the estrogen, and your adrenal glands, which are these two little kind of kidney bean shaped glands that live on top of your kidneys, they have to produce that excess or that extra estrogen as well. So if you are stressed, think about it like this. Okay, let's say you have a job, and your job is to, let's say you're a crossing guard. Okay, your job is to make sure those kids get safely across the street. And that's an important job. Okay. Now, let's say at the same time, somebody came to you and said, okay, not only do you have to make sure that the kids are getting safely across the street, but I need you to check your phone and update, I need you to answer any email that comes in within 5 minutes. And you're like, oh, well, it's possible, but I'm not going to do a great job watching the kids. So that's what happens in your body is your adrenal glands are like, I'm supposed to be regulating stress over here. And now you're asking me to start to produce estrogen. So now I have to do two things at the same time. And that's a lot of work. And it's kind of fragging me out. And I think that's part of what we feel. So if we can take stress levels down a little bit, even a little bit, by using something like an adaptogenic herb, taking daily walks, taking some of the stress out of our lives just by making our schedule a little more simple. That's an easy thing we can do. Just do less stuff. Just less stuff. Then we have there's less cars on the road to protect the kids, right? So it's okay, I can do a little bit of both now. That's probably a terrible example. I would not want my crossing guard having to do the other job, but I'm just saying, you know what I mean? So taking any of that extra work off is going to be helpful for your whole system. So then you don't feel like you're being pulled in a million directions. So there you are. I would love to hear your thoughts. What has helped you move through perimenopause? What herbs have you tried? What do you like? What hasn't worked? And maybe it's because the tissue states didn't work up. Maybe you were taking something that wasn't matched to your constitution. And that, I think it matters. So let me know. And thank you for subscribing. And we'll see you all in the next video.